Alrighty, welcome back. So it's time for the Great Rewind. So there are two programming languages in iOS that you need to know about. There's Swift, which is the new language, and then there's Objective-C, which is the older language. Most of the things we're going to do in Swift, right? Swift is this great, new, powerful thing that makes life easier, great. But there are years and years, decades of Objective-C code out there, and you're going to need to know how to work with Objective-C. So we're going to go through some of our basic examples again with Objective-C. So we've done like a color sliders, we've done a scorekeeper, we've done a tic-tac-toe, we've done a lights out, we've done some playground things. We're going to remake those in Objective-C. It's going to be faster this time because we're not going to do any of the storyboard stuff. But we're going to show you what Objective-C looks like. And so in this particular unit, some of the things we're going to go over is we're going to introduce you to Objective-C. And we're just going to kind of look at here's some of the language that was written in Swift. How do we do that exact same thing in Objective-C? So, this is a real example, and we'll do this later in this unit. But it's just meant to kind of introduce you to Objective-C. Now, obviously, we could go through this very systematically. It's like, here's a function, here's a variable, and we will do that next time. I kind of like to just introduce you with a real app, something simple, and this you can see little pieces as they come up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go find our Color Sliders app. This one we were learning about Interface Builder. So we're going to go find it. So somewhere, this is the hard part, you've got this app. So I've got mine right here. And what I want you to do is I just want you to right click on it and I want you to say copy, and then I want you to paste it in here as well. And I want you to go ahead and name this new copy OBJC, just stands for Objective-C. And if you want to, just for clarity, you can leave your other one named Swift. So if you go into your OBJC version, this is the one we're going to modify. You can check to make sure it still works. So I'm just going to pick a device here. I'm going to pick one of the iPhones because that's all we made this app for. And make sure it still runs. This is using the Swift code, of course. And it'll pop up and it'll kind of look like this. And as you move the sliders around, you can see that it still performs as you expected. So this is a perfectly functional app. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to break it, essentially. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the storyboard. We're going to break all of the existing connections. So you can open up kind of like the connections inspector over here, and then the view controller. And you can see that we had a connection to all the different sliders and all the different labels. We're just going to kill all of those. The only one we're going to leave is the connection to the view. We're also going to go down, we're going to kill the IB actions for slider changed. And so now all those connections are broken. So if you tried to run it now, it would do very poorly because we just broke all the connections. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change what type of view controller this is. Right now, this view controller, if you go to its type right here, it's of custom class view controller, which is kind of a terrible name, but this one's called view controller. What we're going to do is we're going to make an Objective-C view controller, and we're going to use it instead of the Swift view controller. So our first Objective-C. So right click on the project here, say new file, and say new iOS source Cocoa Touch class. So make sure that's all selected. And say next. And sure enough, it defaulted to saying a subclass of UI view controller. That is exactly what we want. I could give it a name like Color Sliders View Controller, but I'm going to just call it OBJC View Controller just so I don't get it confused. And I'm going to make sure my language is set to Objective-C. So I'm going to say next. It's going to have me save it. The default is fine. And then it's going to ask me a question as to whether I want a bridging header or not. Bridging headers are the key to when you have Swift code and Objective-C code, and you want to make some calls from one to the other. That's actually not what we're doing this time. We're actually just completely replacing it with Objective-C code. So I'm going to say, no, I don't really need a bridging header. If you'd said yes, it's fine. You just leave it empty, no big deal. And so now this is the view controller that we're going to use instead of our Swift one. The first thing you'll notice about Objective-C is that it uses two files, right? So there's a .h file and a .m file. You'll end up going back and forth between these guys all the time. It's Control-Command up if you just want to use the quick key to go back and forth. And it works just like C, C++, and then it's got a header and an implementation. Just really quickly, some things you'll notice. In the header file, there's a thing called an interface, and it says who the superclass is. And then in the implementation, the .m file, there's actually an internal interface here. This is for like private methods and stuff. We don't actually need this time. We could just delete it if we wanted, and that'd be just fine. And then in here, the main thing is the implementation. So this is the implementation area. We can clean this up a little bit. We don't need did receive memory warning, and that commented out code, we don't really need it at all. Just because we're getting started, and I just want it to look cleaner, I'll just get rid of the stuff that I don't need. So this is the basics. Now what we want to do over in our storyboard is we want to say, hey, this view controller, if we go to this third icon over, it's no longer a Swift view controller. It's now an OBJC view controller. So now we've fundamentally changed, and you can see it changed the name up here, what type of view controller is in charge of this view we can see. The next thing we want to do is we want to remake all of our connections and outlets. The easiest way to make our connection is to use the assistant editor. Under automatic, it should have shown you that .h and .c file. It looks like mine is behaving poorly. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that happened, but I'm just going to close Xcode and open it back up. That'll be just fine. There we go, much better. Under automatic, you should see you have two choices, the .m file or the .h file. You can make connections straight into the .m, but the way that it used to always work, and the way that I still kind of like, is just to put them into the .h file. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through and we're going to connect all the sliders and all the values exactly like we've done before in Swift. So I'm actually dragging to the .h file here. You can see there's a .h there. And I'm going to call this one my red slider. And you can see that it goes ahead and makes a connection there. And you know, if you prefer, you can do this from the outline over there. So here's my green slider. Oops, this one's actually my blue slider. Apparently my outline was not in the same order. Maybe it was safer to do it from the visual, right? Here's my green slider, which I can see is in my outline, a completely different location. And you'll need to do that for the alpha slider and then also the labels. So go ahead and pause the video and do those, and I'll do the same. So here I'm making my last connection finally. Note that if you mess up, I mean that happens all the time, make sure that you go into like looking at the connections inspector and you break the connection here if you make a mistake, and then just make it the correct way. So one time I grabbed one of the constraints accidentally as I was going through it, and it was fine. I just deleted that connection that I didn't really want, and then I just made the correct one after. Once you've got all the sliders, you can see there I've got my sliders and all the labels. You also need a connection to this view. I believe we called it the color view. And then we're also going to need IB actions anytime one of the sliders changes. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as well. So same as always, I just drag from here, and there's so many ways to do this. Change it to say action. I'm just going to call it slider changed. That was great. If I want to make more also go to it, that's fine. I can drag them and drop them right onto that. Note you could also go the other way, so I could drop it from here over to there, and that works just fine as well. All right, so there I've made all those connections using my assistant editor. That takes some time to get it all down, but hopefully you manage to do those things. And then if you go into your .h file, you should now see that you've got all these connections for outlets and your action here. And if you go into the implementation file, you'll actually see that you've got a callback for slider changed. If you did want to just print out a little message, you can type this. It's nslog, and then you have to put an @ symbol before you start typing the string, and then you finish it with a semicolon. So if you do those things, hopefully you'll get a message whenever your sliders change. So as I move this around, you can see that I get a slider change message. Great, so that's all we're going to do this time. Come back next time and we'll start adding some actual code so we can see how Objective-C differs from Swift. That's what we're really after in this, but we had to make those connections before we could do those things. All right, see you next time. Bye.